Hello everybody, welcome to another tutorial. Welcome to tutorial number 17, I think. Should have probably been ready with that. But this will be the Victorian floor, just to kind of keep it all within the Victorian interior theme. So for this one, it's going to be a little bit smaller, just because we've already done a lot of the base work with the base wood in the first tutorial, or the prereq tutorial. So this is going to be like an all-in-one tutorial, so it should be pretty quick, pretty easy, so it should be really cool. Alright, so so this is what it's going to look like, just to give you guys a little preview. Don't hold me to that, it might look a little different because I have been tweaking it now that I've been getting it ready for this video. But yeah, let's jump. And then after this one, it'll be the ceiling. So this guy will probably be like in a couple days or next weekend. Okay, so let's hop right into it and start on the floor. Alrighty, so here we are in Substance Designer. So this is about the whole graph. We're going to cover height, normal, base color or albedo, and roughness all in this episode. So let's I'm going to disconnect everything and then we'll get started. Alright, we're back. For some reason, since it's been a while since I've done a tutorial, sorry about that. I was turning off all the notes, but I remember I'm supposed to just turn off the blend ones. Anyways, let's get started. I think I have too much over here. Make some room. Alright, so to get started, as you can see on the floor here, we are going to start with a tile sampler grayscale. And our X amount is going to be 2 and our Y is going to be 12. And then our pattern is going to be set to square. Here I play around with the size. The scale is 0.7. My global offset on the X axis, 0.5. And then obviously a 45-degree rotation. -45 in this case. Blending mode set to max. Mask random set to 0. I think that's it. So yeah, just double check, make sure these are the same ones. But basically, this is what we want. And the color variation here is coming from the color random. There you go. That's because otherwise it's going to look like this. But by adding color random, we're able to get different values on those planks, which will help us with our edge detect. Because if our edge detect is reading all the same value, or everything as one island, aka everything being white, then it's just gonna give us like, this is gonna be an island, this is gonna be another one, and obviously this is a continuation of this guy, so it's technically just 2 islands. So we gotta make sure that we give it some more information by breaking it up with the color random, so then it knows the different values, therefore it's gonna give you a different island for each one. But that's skipping ahead. So I think what I did was I just copy pasted this guy over here and then rotated it the other way, so the values should all be the same. Yeah, same size, so otherwise you're gonna have different size planks. And yeah, so instead of the offset being on the X, this was on the Y. So just change that to 0.5 and then 45 degrees. Okay, so then once we have these two, we are going to do 2 histogram scans just to give us our solid islands. So again, instead of duplicating this guy again and then getting rid of the color random, we're just going to use a histogram scan and just jack it up to 1 to get our islands. So we do that for both of these, and then we see here that we have alternating inner islands and then like the outer or middle island and then side islands. So then we have these guys. And then here I have a blend mode where basically we're doing a max lighten. So whatever is brighter will sit on top just as a safety, because we don't want to add. Well, actually, technically you could add, because technically the pixels shouldn't be touching, but if there's anything like that, then it's safer to do a max lighten. That way the brighter pixel will always be on top of the darker one. But if you have two pixels touching and you have it set to add, then it's going to be additive, and it's going to add the pixel below to the pixel above. But this is just saying whatever the pixel is brightest, that's what goes on top. So we don't want to add, just as a safety measure. But yeah, because they're pixel perfect, then it should be okay if you did add, but don't do add. Okay, so then we take the result of that, because now that we have all these islands, we're able to edge detect it, and it'll detect all of them. So now we have our pattern here, and I just set the width and roundness all the way down. And then this gives me my portal for my mask pattern. And then that plugs into a flood fill. And then from the mask pattern, we have these two blends, which I'm not sure what they do. I don't mean to do that. It's been a while. And okay. So these are multiplications? Yeah, okay. So because these right now are it's just separating the islands, or like the rows or the columns, I guess. We need our lines in between. So I'm going to use this pattern to multiply, because anything times black or anything times 0 gives us 0. So if we multiply that, it's going to break up our columns with our islands. So we're able to get our islands on the inner columns and on the middle and outer columns. And then obviously I do another blend here, and I set it to copy, and I just set it to 0.75. And then I do what's this? I use the mask pattern here, the portal, to put it into the mask input. And then this guy, the 0.75 blend, into the source input. And then I distance it out by 5,000 so that I can close it back. But actually, I think I could have just done this now if I think about it. So let's copy paste this guy. Oh wait, no, because I want it with the islands. Okay, never mind. I was gonna say we could just do this, which is technically is true, but then we lose our cutouts, which is what we want. So that's why I did it this way. Okay. Now after the distance, I have a histogram scan, and I'm trying to think why. Why do I have this when I can just take this? Huh. Let me think about it. I honestly do not know why I did this, because whatever this is literally just this guy. So I don't know why I did this whole mumble jumbo here. So let's just, sorry about that. So let's just do this. The only thing different is that this guy belongs to this guy, and this guy belongs to this guy. So this guy's gonna go down here, and this guy's gonna go up here. We're just gonna do this. And then we don't need any of this. I hope I don't regret that later. That's gonna be awkward. I'm about to redo this video, but yeah, this is way simpler and cleaner. Okay, sorry about that. That's weird. Alright, so let's keep going, I guess. Alright. I'm so confused. I think like maybe I was trying to do something and then changed my mind. Anyways, after the flood fill, we're going to use a flood fill to random color, a flood fill to random grayscale, and a flood fill to gradients. And that's all going to come from the same flood fill here. And then we have 3 distances. I think they're all set to 5,000, just to make sure that there's no, to close the gaps here. And then we use our mask pattern portal as the mask input for all these 3 distances. And then that gives us our FF, which means flood fill, random color, our flood fill, random grayscale. And then the D just means it's been distanced out. so it won't have the in-betweens. Alright, so now that we have our 3 flood fill variants here, I don't know why this guy's turned off. So for the flood filter random grayscale, oh well, let me turn this guy back off. So obviously if I don't have this guy, the problem that we have right now is that our planks are crazily all out of different heights. And obviously, unless that's what you're going for, we need to bring that back a little closer together. So that's what this histogram range does. And I have it set to 0.1, and it'll kind of bring the range between them. It'll bring it closer together the lower the range is. So then, I know it's like super hard to tell because they're closer together, but you can see here, they are there. It's just very subtle. If it was any more than this, people would not be able to walk on this floor. They just trip all over the place. And then, aside from the variation on of the height, now we're gonna add some variation to kind of like the slopiness of some of them. So we're gonna take this guy here, our random flood fill random gradient, into this blend. Set the opacity to copy, or the blend mode to copy, and then just set the opacity to 0.05. And then we're going to take our random grayscale, so this guy up here, and I'm just going to do a histogram select, and it lets you pick different values. So I just kind of landed on this one. You can choose whatever you'd like. Should probably pick something with more gaps in between here, because this is kind of like one big chunk, but it's fine. And then that goes into the opacity, so that we have this variance in slope or gradient. And I only want it to happen in these guys and not across the entire thing. Because I wanted some of them to be slopey and some of them to be flat. And honestly, you could do like 3 layers of this if you wanted like a lot of detail. And then having this at 0.05 makes it so that you're not pushing everything through. Otherwise, you're gonna have some that are super slopey. So I just wanted to be subtle. And then I think this level here is just the default levels, just as a placeholder for me, as an anchor. And then that's gonna feed into your normal. And I'm using an ray tracing ambient occlusion set to physical size, using physical size. So it's telling it it's a 2 meter by 2 meter or 200 centimeters plane. And then for the Z value, I have it set to 0.5. That's for the RTAO node here. And then that just goes into a final AO portal, just in case I got to use it anywhere, which in this material I didn't. But for our normal here, I have it set to 2, coming from the same levels. And this guy does get used later. And then it comes back into the final. So it doesn't go from here to here. It goes from here to, well, we're going to be doing this next, so. And then for the height, obviously just from here, final height. And I think I used this some later on. And then it goes in here. All right, so let me just show you what this looks like for me, just in case. I need to remember to start these videos with this information. So height scale of 0.5. And then I just have a tessellation factor of 4. And obviously you can just change that to your liking. But don't go too crazy on the scale, otherwise you're going to have like a really huge discrepancy on the, I think I had it as 0.75 or 0.5. I forget, one of those two. Sometimes it's like 1 or less, I think you're fine. Unless you got rid of this, then it'd be crazy. But anyways, okay, so that's it for height, pretty simple. Now we're going to do normal. So we're going to go from here. Actually, no, we're not. We're going to go over here. And if you have your own basewood, bring that in now. Or if you followed the first tutorial, whoops, you want to just, oh goodness. You know what? That's actually not bad. You can just drag your base wood node if you follow it along with the first part, and then you get this. Actually, let me get rid of that. All right, hold on. Okay. Oops. Okay. So then we have our base wood here, and then we have our 3 outputs that we made. Our base wood, our normal, and our roughness. So now I created portals for them. So we're going to start with our wood normal. We're going to go, where is it? Up here. And we're going to take that from that material we just pulled in from our base wood. And then I just wanted to play around with the normal intensity. So I just turned that into 0.05, into a sharpen, 0.2, into another normal intensity. Actually, I have it go the other way. I think I like to go back and forth. It's like, oh, this is too strong, then I brought it back down. But you can probably just skip this guy and just play around with this one to something that you like more. But anyways, now here's the important thing. We need to assign the wood grain to run the long way on the planks for the floor. So we're going to be using a safe transform several times because we have to do this for the roughness and the base color. But we have to make sure that we're using the same information, because we're going to be using a vector warp node. And if the information is not the same throughout the roughness, the base color, and the normal, then our roughness isn't going to match up with our wood color. And those two aren't going to match up with our wood normal. So just to make sure we're all on the same page here, we're going to copy paste this for our color and our roughness. So let's set it up once. So we have 2 safe transforms. One going corner to corner this way, and then the opposite way. Similar to like the 45-degree rotation that we made at the beginning here. Same thing. We need wood grains going this way and wood grains going this way. And then we're going to use this mask to assign, which direction. So here we rotate our normal 45 degrees. And then this one, it's the other direction, so negative 45 degrees. Then we have our vector warp color, and we have 2 of them. Now these are both set to random seed 0 and intensity of 10, both of them. They're the same exact thing. And then we're going to use our flood fill random color node that we made earlier. The distanced version. And then that is going to get plugged into the vector map of both of these. These are also the exact same, but because they're going in different directions, then we'll be able to pick from them. And the reason for the vector warp is that our wood right now has been done as if it was one solid piece of wood, but obviously these are different planks from different trees put together. So I don't want the grain to run through from one island to the other. You want to have a break. And that's what this node does. It's breaking up the flow based on these colors. And because these are all different colors, then it's going to... So it's kind of like the line is going this way, hits this wall, and then it jumps once it hits here, and it goes, I don't know, like somewhere else random. And so because it's changing direction when it hits a different color, then it's making sure it's giving you more variance. It'd be easier to see if I turn this up. That's kind of hard to tell because but you can see here how it's not continuous. Let me undo that. So I do that for both of these because I want to break it up on both directions. And then I do a copy, so I'm just bringing them together, and then I'm using the mask sideboards. I just need one or the other. And then I feed that into the opacity. And then you can see here that we have some going this way. Let me turn this this intensity back up. So you can see we have some going this way and some going this way, because we're using this mask here that we made earlier. Then the normals in here are just the wood grains. I have to bring back in the normal from the actual planks that we made from the height. So this guy. So then we take this normal, and then we use a normal combine, and then fit that into the normal one, and then our main one here onto the top, normal 2. And then it just combines them together, and now we're bringing the normal from the height information and then the normal information from the base wood material, and then together combined, and then that makes our final normal, and then that gets put into the output. Otherwise, if we just do this normal, we lose our wood grain, and we just have planks. Not even wooden planks, just planks. And then if we did it the other way, then we would only have wood, and we wouldn't have this like plank variation. And then we have a normalize just for funsies, and then into the normal. So now that we have normal done, let's go into base color. So now we're going to start with our base color wood, which is, you know, our base color from our wood material. Same thing, we have 2 safe transforms, and you can just copy paste these 4 if you want, but be careful with the actually no. Yeah, you want to copy this guy too. So again, they're pointing to different corners. And then we have our vector warp color, and then we have our random color flood fill to use as a breakup. Set to 10 and 10. Now this is the important part. You want to make sure that these safe transforms are using the same seeds. So they're all zeros. And then the vector warp colors are also zeros. And they're also the same intensity. If your intensities don't match, you're going to have a bad time, because not everything's going to align. Because if we look here, you can see some wood grains here. And then if we look at the normal, not that one, sorry, this one, you can see that it lines up. So it goes like a V here and another V here. So then if we go to our, you can see a V here and a V there. So you have to make sure that your intensity and your seeds match. If you change the seed, you're gonna get a different seed. All right, so same thing. We mix both directions together with the same mask that we used before. So copy paste all of this. And then here we go into some actual base coloring. I wanted to have the side ones be a darker color. Actually, let me plug this in. There we go. I wanted them to have a darker shade every other row. So then I just took the result from back here. And if you don't want this, obviously you wouldn't do this step, and then they'd all be the same color. But you take the result from here into an HSL. Then I just darkened it to 0.435. Feed that back into the foreground, and then, use this mask to assign, which ones are darker. So then it makes those darker. Why is this here? Oh. If you wanted to just kind of do random ones be a different color, then you could just fit a mask in for that. And I took my flood fill random grayscale. Now I would suggest doing a histogram select. Otherwise, what's going to happen is if you're using the same portal or mask that we used for the height variation, then the deep ones are going to be the darker ones. And maybe you want that, but maybe you want them to truly be random, then you want to use a different mask. Otherwise, you're going to be matching masks with, the height variation. You're going to be using the same mask for the color, so it's going to make it's going to line up with that. So maybe use a histogram select to get a different variation. All right, anyways, next, what's this do? Huh? What do you do? All right, just some highlighting. So we take our final normal. Now this is the final, so this one has the wood grain and the plank information into a normal intensity, just to kind of make it pop more. Into a curvature Sobel, into a default gradient map. This is what we do in all our in all of the tutorials. And then we have an overlay set to 0.5. And you can see the difference here. Just to kind of help it pop. And then we have another highlight. So you can see the difference between here and this step. We take our normal. Now this one should technically be the same one as here. Why is it different? Oh, maybe that's why I didn't do that. Yeah, so for this one I just took the plank information to get more highlight on the actual planks. I didn't want more highlight on the wood grain. So then that goes into the normal intensity, curvature Sobel, and then the gradient map again, just the default one, into the foreground there, overlay 0.25, so just less, so it's not as strong. And like I said, I only did it for the planks and not the wood grain, because otherwise I think it would be way too noisy. Yeah, it's like too noisy for me. I wanted it to kind of be smooth, since it is like polished wood. And then here, I think this is just our dirt mask. Yeah, so you can see here where there's a height difference, like a drastic height difference. So obviously you're gonna get some dirt stuck in there. So that's what we're doing here. So we took our final height into an auto levels to get the full range. We'd use an HBAO here, just so that it's cheaper than the ray tracing ambient occlusion. And you can see the settings there. And then we took our normal, again, pre-wood grain, because I don't want there to be dirt within the wood grain. That'll be a little bit too much probably, but you know, always feel free to try it. Yeah, you're not going to see it too much because of the settings. You would have to increase like the dirt amount if you wanted to see it. But even then, the wood grain is very shallow, so you'd have to like super jack up the intensity on it. So we're just gonna go back to the normal only, curvature smooth, and then that has 3 outputs: curvature, convexity, and concavity. And we're gonna take the curvature, plug that into curvature, take our HBAO, and plug that into the ambient occlusion slot. And then you can see the settings that I use. Feel free to play with your own, but I wanted it to be subtle, and I wanted to be in the really, really, really corners of the planks. And then we make a mask for it because we're going to be using this on our roughness in a bit. Goes into the opacity. This is the color that I used. You can see it there. It's 0.105 and I don't know why it keeps reverting to 9999999, but those are the values. And then you can see the difference, like right here, where dirt would accumulate. And then we just use a slight sharpen of 0.125, and then I brighten the overall floor. And then that goes into the base color. So then we go from that to that. Now let's do the roughness and wrap this up. So now we're going to take our wood roughness from the base material, from the base wood, and then plug that again into another safe transform. Copy paste from the one from before. Same thing all the way up to here. So all of this, these 5 nodes and these 2 portals. And then again, it'll give you this. Actually, we should probably plug this in. Yeah, see, otherwise the roughness, the wood grains on the roughness is going to run on the wrong ones. So we need this mask. And then I use a histogram range again to squish the difference, because obviously this looks way too drastic. Unless this is what you're going for, but I didn't want to go that hard. So I kind of bring the values closer together and I lower the position, so there's like a smoother floor, not that smooth. And that gives me like a nice base to start with. And then just start adding some noises on top to kind of add some more variation. So we take our black and white spots too. And you can see the difference like right here. So then we take a black and white spots too into a histogram scan. We kind of tighten it up a bit. And then I use a levels here to bring down the intensity from that to that. Otherwise it's going to go pretty crazy on the floor here. And then into a copy, into a uniform color, set to grayscale, set all the way up to 1. And then I use this slider down here, or the level out high, to determine how strong I want this to be. And you can obviously change it to your liking. I want it to be very subtle, but you can choose whatever you'd like. Then we do another pass, a more subtle pass here. This is what it looks like. So for that, we're starting with a grunge spots dirty into a transform 2D where I increase the tiling by 2, into a multiply blend mode, and then we take the black and white spots 2 into a transform 2D and I offset it randomly. And then I do a histogram scan and I lower the position to kind of have some more black in there. And then I multiply it. I mix these two together and I multiply them. And it just gives me like a different noise. And then again, I use this slider to reduce or increase the intensity. And then we have another uniform white here, grayscale. And then we take, now I wanted some shiny spots. Like right here. Just to kind of, because I didn't want to just go in one direction in my roughness. I started with a base, and then I added rougher details on top. And then once I've done all my roughness details, I want to add like one quick layer of shininess to kind of break up all that roughness. Otherwise, you're just going to get like a super rough, I guess not super, but a rougher overall look. So this gives us some nice contrast. Grunge spots, opacity, and then here I just use a uniform color. So whatever this color is, that's whatever color these guys will be. Or you could do subtract, but I went with copy. And then, so then now we move on to this guy. And what I wanted to do here is add some how do I explain this? You can kind of see it. Some kind of like gradient roughness up to like the edges of the planks. So you can kind of, let me turn this off and on. Again, it's very subtle, and I know it looks all uniform, and we're gonna break that up. So we're going to start with our mask pattern. So this guy from the height. And then we're going to use a non-uniform blur grayscale. And if you non-uniform blur grayscale it by itself, so you put this guy into both slots, then and play around with the settings, you kind of get like this like self-blurring, kind of like a blur, like a high quality blur, but it kind of does it towards the inside of itself. So now we kind of get like this fall, like this, kind of like a bevel basically. And then I invert it. And then I blur it a bit to kind of get it to overlap on top. And then obviously you want to break up the uniformity so that it doesn't look like this. So then the first set is I want to get rid of it in between the planks. So I take that mask pattern and then I multiply it. And I get this. And then I take this purlin noise and then I subtract it. So we go from this to this after we multiply and after we subtract. And then I use the levels to play around with the value. If I turn this back up, it's gonna look like that. But I want it to be subtle. So then we get like another layer of detail on top. And then we have here kind of like adding some really roughness in between the planks, like where they meet, because that's where you're gonna have like the most like dirt accumulation, and we're just gonna look the roughest. So we're gonna take our mask pattern again from our height, this guy, into a distance node, and basically what I wanted to do was kind of just start closing in the pixels together. Normally when I use my distance node, it's to bring the pixels or the islands all the way together to where they meet. But in this case, I just kind of wanted to have like a slight bevel. So I did a 0.25 distance with no source input. And then from there, I did another histogram scan to kind of tighten, to reduce the gaps in between. So we went from this to this, because I wanted to have a very, very, very thin line of rough in between. So then same thing, I invert it, and then I blur it by itself so that I have a gradient. Otherwise, you're just gonna have like two pixels of roughness. But this way, I get a gradient. So non-uniform blur, and then I auto level this to get the full range back. And then we do a levels here again to play around with the value, to play around with the intensity. So then we go from this to this. And then if we get a good angle here, you can kind of see it right there. And it kind of just, it helps add some contrast between each plank, and it helps give the viewer like, oh, this is where the plank stops and the next one starts. And it helps break that up, because we don't want this to seem like it's one piece of wood. We want to make sure that people are noticing the in-betweens and where the connections are being made. And then here we use our dirt layer, and we just add a small layer of overall roughness from the dirt. So we take our final normal, and we do our normal to high quality into an auto levels, and then we invert it, and then we histogram scan it, and then we levels it again, very low value, otherwise it's going to be really extreme. So again, I just want to have some more shadowing on these deep spots here. And then into a copy, into a uniform. And this is also a uniform back here, just in case I didn't cover it. Oh, sorry. And then this is where we add our dirt mask. So we're going to use our dirt portal here that we made up here into a levels. So I wanted to kind of bring in the tightness around it. So then we go from, and again, it kind of adds another layer of contrast, another layer of breakup. It makes it look more realistic. And then that's it for roughness, which means we're done. Hopefully I did. I don't think I missed anything, but if I did, just let me know in the comments. But yeah, that's an all-in-one. And it's, again, it's really short because a lot of this is the hard work's already done in the pre-rec version. So make sure you check that out if you're following this along and you don't have a material that you can start with. You can also just bring in your own images from Google as well. The only problem with that is that you would only be able to get your base color. But there's some software out there where you might be able to like play around with it, or if you know Photoshop, you can do that, or you can just check out the tutorial. It should be in the playlist. and I'll link it in the description so that you can find it easier. All right. Anyways, the next one will be the ceiling. So I will be posting that one soon because that was also going to be really short. So thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys learned something, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.